Khezu was my first failed quest, not my first cart, not my first difficult monster, my first failure. A 2-star Khezu. The strange thing is, he never carted me. I simply wasn't damaging him enough. The quest timer expired. Back then, I was still using beginner equipment. The same equipment I had when I first started hunting. And before I even found Khezu, the game had already started teaching me a lesson. It took me more than 20 minutes to find him. 20 minutes. I explored nearly every area on the map. Again, and again, and again. At one point, I started asking myself ridiculous questions. Is this monster trying to avoid me? Is there a game mechanic that lets monsters sense the hunter and move away whenever you get close? I genuinely considered it, because every area I searched was empty. Looking back, the answer was obvious. The place I kept avoiding was the place he was hiding, the cave. Instinct kept telling me to check the cave. I ignored it. If I had simply followed my instinct, I would have saved 20 minutes. Though, to be fair, I gathered a lot of materials along the way. At that stage of the game, I didn't even know what Khezu looked like. Then, I finally found him, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He looked like a walking, skinless chicken. A pale sack of flesh, with a long neck. A monster that somehow looked both ridiculous and disturbing at the same time. A walking dressed chicken capable of releasing 1,000 volts of electricity. I remember thinking, this monster is a joke. Turns out this joke hits really hard. The scream was annoying. The electric aura was annoying. Touch him while he's covered in electricity, and he'll launch you across the area. The damage was significant. Get hit by his electric discharge, and you're paralyzed. Get paralyzed, and the body slam follows. And suddenly you're dead. Even today, I sometimes wonder if Khezu has some hidden mechanic, designed specifically to pin hunters into corners. Because even after hundreds of hours and countless hunts, every now and then he'll still trap me against a wall. The electric aura comes out. The body slam follows, and somehow I still get hit. Maybe it's not a mechanic. Maybe it's paranoia. But Khezu has a way of making experienced hunters feel inexperienced. That's part of what makes him memorable. If you judge him based on appearance, you'll regret it. He's like a kung fu master disguised as a beggar. A man wearing torn clothes who looks harmless until he breaks your jaw. Khezu doesn't even have eyes, and yet somehow he always knows where you are. To this day, I still think he has a superpower, an endgame monster disguised as an early game lesson. Looking back, Khezu reminds me of my first grade homeroom teacher. She carried a meter stick. Officially, it was for measuring. In reality, it was for discipline. If you spent your childhood in a public school, in a third world country, you probably understand exactly what I mean. She was strict, very strict, but she had a way of teaching students what they needed to learn before moving on to the next grade. At the time, you feared her. Years later, you realized she was preparing you. Khezu felt the same way, because the materials I earned from him eventually helped me overcome monsters like Tigrex and Rajang. But before he gave me materials, he gave me lessons. At first, my friends offered advice. Use better equipment. Use a weapon with better sharpness. Use fire weapons. The problem was simple. At that point in the game, there wasn't much better equipment available. I remember trying twin cut coup. The fire effect looked impressive. Every hit felt powerful, but something felt wrong. The raw damage wasn't there. The weapon kept bouncing. And during that period I didn't even know how to properly use Demon Dance. Eventually I abandoned it. Then reality hit me. I wasn't looking for the strongest weapon. I was looking for my weapon. The weapon that felt natural. The weapon I trusted. The weapon that made sense to me. That was when I discovered Longsword and Greatsword. And from that moment onward, they became my companions. Almost every major hunt afterward involved one of those two weapons. Tigrex, Rajang, a contour. Almost always Longsword or Greatsword. I only switched when absolutely necessary. A bow against Crimson Vitalis, dual blades against Chameleos, so I could devil dance his hind legs and stop him from disappearing every 5 seconds. But my foundation was already established. Long sword, great sword. Khezu forced me to find them, and that was only the beginning. Because Khezu wasn't teaching me how to fight Khezu, he was teaching me how to play Monster Hunter. He taught me things that no guide ever explained. The signs monsters give when they're ready for capture. The little behaviors that reveal their condition. Most monsters limp. That part is obvious. Khezu was different. Sometimes he would simply stop, stand completely still, like a statue. The first time I saw it happen, I stopped too. I just stared at him, trying to understand what I was looking at. Then he suddenly flew away, and I realized I had wasted a perfectly good damage window. I had been fooled. Again, lesson learned. Then there was the camp. One of the most important discoveries I ever made in Freedom Unite. The bed. The realization that if things were going badly, I could return to camp and sleep. My health would recover. My hunt could continue. Today that sounds trivial. Back then, it felt revolutionary. Because Freedom Unite was a game of scarcity. Your supplies were limited. Your healing items mattered. Every potion mattered. Every mega potion mattered. Every mistake mattered. The camp bed felt like a secret. A safety net hidden in plain sight. And over the years, I've come to think of it as something more. Almost like family, when everything goes wrong. When you've exhausted your resources. When you've run out of answers. There is still one place you can return to. You simply have to go home. Looking back, Khezu wasn't the hardest monster I ever hunted. Not even close. Rajang was harder. A Cantor was harder. But Khezu taught me more than any of them. Because Khezu arrived before I understood Monster Hunter. Before I knew my weapon. Before I understood monster behavior. Before I knew when to trap. Before I knew when to retreat. Before I knew when to return home. Tigrex taught me respect. Gypceros taught me humility. Rajang taught me discipline. Khezu taught me the foundation that made all of those lessons possible. And maybe that's why I still remember him. Not because he was powerful, not because he was frightening, but because every hunter has a monster that forces them to stop playing the game and start learning it. For me, that monster was Khezu, a blind, screaming, electrified chicken that spent 50 minutes teaching me how to become a hunter. And looking back now, I think he was a better teacher than most monsters that came after him. Because the greatest teachers aren't the ones who show you how much they know. They're the ones who show you how much you still have to learn.